Hi. So thank you. It's kind of hard to continue after Hani's great presentation, but I'll try. Um, so, uh, so I'm going to give you like a little bit of a personal account, which kind of like after uh, working for several months on automatic contact tracing and getting a little bit frustrated with what's going on. I like kind of a little bit of my view at the problem. I think it's kind of like a little bit of a microcosm of where we are. So we all know the social contracts, the different philosophical or whatever aspects and takes on social contracts, and we know that living in society is not an easy thing. On the one hand, we all enjoy it and like it and want to be together. We can't think of living otherwise. Uh, but it involves, a lot of compromises of all kinds of sorts, all sorts that we like and we don't like, and we have to like give up our liberty, in order to respect the liberty of other, and we have to give up our liberty to not harm another person physically or emotionally or socially, in general the well-being of other people, and this it's a constant kind of like tug of war, compromise, how to do it, and of course there's just not individual versus individual. There's groups and subsections of society and history. It's about harms to different groups, and but the point is that we know that no set of decisions is ever going to be complete and is ever going to be universally accepted. So we kind of like accepted that we know that this living in society is going to be compromised. It's going to be a changing compromise. It's not going to be. It's an inherently evolving aspect, and we're never going to agree. There're going to be always some people who are going to be unhappy, but we have managed to engineer it somehow, some legal, social, political system that allows us all to live together more or less in harmony, even though we're not always happy with what's going on. I think the last couple of weeks were kind of like a great example of this. Uh, but the point is that this social contract is evolving, as we know. It's changing all the time with times. So and it is depending in many respects on the technology of the time. So all these trade-offs and all these decisions, social decisions of one harm against another harm, really depend on the technology of the time, and the specifics of the different harms. So as technology changes, the new harms, the new dangers, and new opportunities, and of course new power relations between different types sections of society, and and both the makeup of society changes, and the point is that things become available, the contract itself changes, and the technology really affects the social contracts, but not always for the better. So we know look over the history, some technological achievements actually change things for the better. Others, like the firearm, I mean, they change it maybe for the worse, and maybe some of them change for the better for others, and the worse for others. But this social contract is something that is really highly dependent on the technology of the time. It's important, and the point is, in order to take advantage of technology and actually make sure the technology goes in a good place. Technology brings the social contract forwards rather than backwards. Really needs the laws and society to be nimble and understand the technology to make good use of it. And it's not always the case, and that's I think why we are all here today. Um, and kind of with this kind of background, so I think that this automatic contact tracing is really kind of like it's a microcosm of all these things come together. And really, to me, for the last few months that I've been working on this, highlighted to me like the importance of technology and bringing technology to society for this to work. I mean, not just developing the technology, but developing technology that people can understand. Um, so let's talk a few minutes about this contact tracing conundrum. So we know that the fast and effective isolation of super spreaders, those people, those 20% of those sick people that infect lots of other people, can really curb the COVID pandemic, can really bring it down. Even without, of course, we want a vaccine, and we want it fast, and that would be great. But even without vaccine, if the virus doesn't spread, then it doesn't spread. And so we know that this is the case, and we know that, and we actually have the technology to do it, as I'll see later, but it doesn't work. Well, there are many other issues, right? So executing this isolation of people is really problematic. So first, there are the fundamental issues that quarantine has dire side effects on the individuals that are being quarantined, also on everybody else because of the economy disruption that by now we all see. And of course, there's this issue always that equal burden on different communities. The more vulnerable communities get harmed much more. Different countries get harmed differently. So it's a real example of exactly the social contract at work or being tested or stress tested when you want to different parts of the society wants to do different things, and definitely by doing anything that benefits one part will essentially inherently harm another. And what you do, and, where is the social contract that allows us to do it? So this is like the one, maybe the thing is like deciding whether to quarantine or not. But then there's all these other issues that have to do with this detection of super spreaders or spreaders. So first, collecting the data is very privacy invasive in many ways. So first, the data that's being collected pertains not only to one person. It pertains to other people. It's not just about me. And this is, we know it always that data is not about one person, but here this is clearly a concrete example where my data is not just about me, for better or worse. And there's all these issues with social labeling with people. First there's, should I snitch on the other person, or am I going to be blamed later that I infected it? I infected other people. There's a lot of emotions and social stigma going around this legal information about infection and spreading. And all these issues, of course, multiplied by a lot when the government or whoever is handling the pandemic is not trusted. Well, first of all, it's not trusted to do the right thing for the society, for individuals, for the economy at the moment, and also when it's not trusted to not kind of like collect this data and abuse it later. And so when people really don't trust the government, these things break. So really what happens is the social contract fails, and we know what's going on with the pandemic. So of course, we think about it, the technology can actually change things. Actually, in fact, we can change the terms of the contract. We cannot make the decisions, but as technologists, we can change the contract. But the point is, we can only do it if we're backed by law, or not just by law and societal understanding and acceptance. And then the question is how to do it. So here are some of the relevant parameters. And I think we know them, but let me just spell them out. So first is the accuracy of the detection of infection. Then there's the issue of false positives, which have dire effects of quarantining people who should not be quarantined, or maybe quarantine them for too long. But we also have the issue of false negatives, that again, people get infected and the pandemic rages on. So that's clearly a technological issue. How well do we detect? And there is of course the ability to determine appropriate action, and on a case-by-case basis, right? So we're weighing the harm of quarantine for the individual person that we're going to decide whether to quarantine or not. Depending on their economic status and the employment status or whatever other status that we have, kind of weighing that. And then there's the issue of weighing the harm of infection if we don't quarantine them. Again, this is the case-by-case basis, whether this person, is only living in university dorms and only sees kids of age 20, that's one thing, or if there's, or in an elderly home, or in any other situation. So there's one, in order to make judicious decisions about a case-by-case basis, one has to be nimble here, because otherwise we know that we get harm to people in unbounded ways. And again, so we have to make some principle determination and make the determination again in some way that is going to be socially acceptable by everybody. So we should have a way, in order to do this right, this is what we should be doing, right? And there's also another very important parameter here is who will be in control of the decision. Is that something that the individual should control? Is it okay to let the individual control, given the information, let them decide for themselves, or should society force the decisions? And what cases should society force a decision? And when is it okay, when is it not? Well, it's an issue of a social contract, but is informed by the technology. And I think people will have different different feelings about a social contract if they know that when they force somebody to quarantine, this is done only in the case where the person, it's 90% justified or 50% justified, and weighing towards the harm to that person. So that's something that we should be able to do. And then there's other parameters, which is like all these unwanted side effects from privacy loss that I mentioned before. So this issue of shaming and blaming by peers, is that so that's another aspect of this tracing that may or may not be important and maybe not exist, again depending on the technology. So all this is kind of wading into this social contract decision of what to do with this. And of course, there's all these other economic, societal effects of being infected or not. We've seen all these. We just heard that now Ticketmaster is going to give this certificate of immunity in order to get into shows. And stuff like that. So this may be a small thing, but it's again, it's the issue of a social contract of how much is it okay or not okay to do those things. And again, all this is based on the technology and the ability to do this effectively. And of course, there's these other aspects of its robustness to abuse and to abuse either by individuals for their own benefit, right? And that's maybe the lowest level of abuse, in some sense. Then you can even talk about abuse by terrorists or malicious organizations. I'm writing terrorists just to name for somebody who's completely malicious. But I think all of these is even not as bad as abuse by a raw government, which really would unravel the social contract where the government has the mandate to rule. So these are the parameters, and the social decision points maybe are the ones that are kind of in light blue. These are places where you really have to make value judgments in society of which way you want to go. But these are really informed by the technology. And all of these aspects here come in when you want to decide, decisions which may be decisions of life and death for people, what to do, whether to, again, quarantine, not quarantine, what, how to make, social decisions about the lives of individuals in society. So one thing that we know that we've seen in a number of examples, number of countries around the world, that when the social contract in countries with the social contract has kind of a weaker freedom clause to begin with, contact tracing actually works. And there are countries, both countries that we consider as democratic and countries that maybe not considered as democratic when those labeling doesn't really matter, but countries like either China or Taiwan or South Korea that where people accepted the fact that some of their freedom was going to be taken, and they allowed the government to have more information on people. Greater violations of freedom and privacy by government, and allows you can accept the fact that the government can forcibly quarantine people, and accept the fact that the government can collect a lot of information about people, and when this is accepted, actually things work, and the pandemic is not as disruptive to society, and actually society can go back to normal pretty fast, and as we've seen in all those countries. Well, there are countries where the government still violates the freedoms of the people, and still things don't work, like Israel, but that's a different story. Okay, so the point is that the things, we can make it work if we are willing to give away our freedom. And we've heard people say, why can it be the case in the US? I mean, why aren't we not willing to give away freedoms in order to get this thing done? But the US is the US, and the question is, can we have the same effect with lesser violation of freedom and privacy? So obviously some violations are inevitable, as we've seen, but many of these violations are indeed we can prevent them with the right technology. So first, let me talk about the human contact tracing that is done around the world, specifically in the US. Initially there were lots of hopes for that, but it turns out to be first it's inherently limited in reach, because it is only limited to the people that that you saw and that you were with, and it will never catch the people that you just happen to be nearby in the beach or in a public area or in a public mall. But even for those that it seems to not be working too well. So those contact tracers are being trained, and are being trained to understand and to listen to the people, and to actually adjudicate case by case, and to be sensitive to the community. I've been talking to some of them. I've been in the past few months to hear their side of the story. And they really care. They really want to help and to really to talk to people, understand, and catch the and isolate the sources. But people don't trust them, and in some sense, sometimes for good reason. Definitely in the U.S. because, for instance, there is no legal protection on the information to those contact tracers collect, and even forget the fact that how technologically secure the information is stored or not secure. This information is not protected, say, by HIPAA or anything, and it can be subpoenaed. And in fact, I think it has been subpoenaed. And people don't want to say anything. They don't want to snitch. Who knows? ICE later goes and subpoenas the information. And the fact is that those stations cannot even tell the people with straight face that this information will never be subpoenaed because it can. So these are issues, and indeed, as we've seen, that this human contact tracing is not really very effective in the U.S. In other places, it is where there is more trust in the government, but not in the U.S. So what about automated contact tracing? There's all this beautiful technology, and the fact is that in fact, in principle, at least on paper, we can actually do it all, right? And we can do it with multi-party computation technology, not even such far-fetched technology. We can collect information from individuals about everything, the location, the environment, whether they're indoors, they're outdoors, air draft, sounds, whatever, using cell phones and other wearable devices. There's a lot of information to collect in order to understand when there was actually contact which is close enough with the person that was infected, and to get a high likelihood of high reading of the accurate enough reading of the likelihood of infection. So we can collect all this information from individuals, we can aggregate it, and we can cross the all the information that we need, and we can find these infected people. Not always in real time, only when that somebody's infected, we go back several days to see who they were with. But you can do it pretty fast, and then we can make in principle, we can know everything about the people, we know their situation, and we can make judicious determination about what to do, whether to just notify the individual, whether in which cases we should actually forcibly quarantine, should be check back and get back and check how whether the person quarantined or not. So all this information is there and can be used. It can be used using the right technology, where this information is just used inside the algorithm and it's never leaked outside. And we can also obtain the medical, the useful statistics that we need in order to understand the pandemic, and we can also do this in a way that we really preserve our privacy in an optimal way according to whatever social contract it needs that we want. So we can actually make it so that people would not, we can even decide sometimes, I'm not going to tell this person that they're infected because I know that this person, the only other person that they saw the last 2 weeks is this other person. And we don't want them to know that it's another person that was sick. So maybe in this case, we will let it go because of some noise and stuff. So we can do all kinds of little of decisions that will balance privacy versus utility, and everything can be done in a way that is kind of in some sense pre-programmed and well balanced. And also, in addition, we can generate publicly verifiable mathematical proofs that everything was done right according to those algorithms. So those, again, technology exists, and it's not so rocket science anymore. And we can also have, kind of definite sunset clause where, at the end of some well-determined time or bound or condition, the information is destroyed and it's not there anymore. So again, those things in principle can be done, and the technology to do it again is not that rocket science. I mean, I don't say that there is any system today that works this way, but all the technology is there and implemented in other areas, pieces of this. But we are not there. We're not even close to being there. Because the point is that, so this, in order to do this right, you need to have some infrastructure. You have to have societal infrastructure and legal infrastructure that understand this technology and sets it up, right? And so in order to do this, you need to have some collaborative control of this data. It cannot be controlled by one entity, a government or some health authority, because again, we don't want to trust this one entity. It has to be some collaborative control. So, which sounds a lot like what Kobe and Katrina was talking about yesterday, but now it's not just a data collective for specific, advertising purposes of a specific data, but this is actually a data collective of the people in the society for the purpose of controlling pandemic. And we should have the right constituents that participate in controlling this data and what is done with it. And again, society should be geared and have the right infrastructure to do this, and the right legal infrastructure to protect the data from legal abuses. So we don't have, and we don't even have the societal acceptance of this technology, and we don't have the societal awareness of this technology. So really, this is a non-starter, which is kind of like unfortunate, but we're not there. Maybe, so we say in many other places, this pandemic brought society, 10 years forward within half a year. At least everybody's using Zoom now, so maybe this will happen faster too. But we're still not there. So instead, what has been happening in the last 6 months or so, maybe more already, since March, is kind of, we call it kind of a permanent solution, but it's actually not so bad. But it's if you compare it to what could happen, it really is a permanent solution. So what we do, we use this cell phone, the Bluetooth on the cell phone, to determine collocation in a decentralized way. So it's kind of it's a neat idea. So just to repeat, I'm sure you all know it, but so the point is that Alice phone download this app and starts sending these random chirps around. So let me not get into the cryptographic details of that. It's not important. Those chirps change every few minutes or whatever. And then when Bob goes around, he also has the app. He collects it. He just records all the chirps that he's hearing as he walks around. And then at some point later, Alice lets you know that she's infected, unfortunately. So she uploads together with the doctor the chirps anonymously. That's important. That's anonymous to the server, and then Bob downloads the chirps of infected Alice. Then he knows that he's infected and knows to do something about it. And the important thing is that this is fully decentralized. So there is no secret database. Completely everything is public. So this is something which is like geared towards social public acceptance. This is something that it's you don't need to understand any fancy crypto. This is just, there is no secret information anywhere, and there's autonomy to the users. So the users has full autonomy. Nobody can even know that they're infected. They are the only one who would know. if implemented right, by the way. So that's good. And also there is autonomy of users to decide and join in every time. And it cannot be abused by authorities in any way, as because there is no secret information that they may go and look. And really, this is something that, it was, the design was to get it accepted. I made it easy for people to accept. And it was, and Google and Apple very nicely kind of like got on this wagon. It was really nice. So once they were doing things to give back to society for all the information that they were collecting from people all the time, and did a really nice job in doing it, and fast, and it became widely available, but it's still not that great. So first, it's only Bluetooth, and Google and Apple rightly kind of like completely didn't allow any other information to be joined with that for privacy considerations. So that means a relatively weak accuracy. So it's better than other things, but it's not so great. So it's false positives. And some attacks are allowed, but are possible, sorry, but that's maybe a smaller thing. And but then there is kind of like, it's still awkward to implement because the way it's done, they need some third-party apps, and then it's simple but not so simple how to get it done. They need local health authorities to be part of the loop, and that's again a problem because those authorities don't really know what's going on. They have very low knowledge about technology, and in some sense, it would have been even better to do it without any law authorities, just to run it. But Google and Apple, I guess, wanted to be good citizens and prevent abuses, so they tied it up to local health authorities, which is slowing things down. And it's really relatively slow in uptake. But this is where we are. So just to finish up, so this is where we are. Hopefully this will still help. There's another wave coming, so maybe this will help in another wave. But I think if we're looking forward to getting such things working and up and running, that really working like that exploit the full advantage potential of technology. So society and both society and the law must kind of like acknowledge, be more nimble and understanding about how data works. So we know that the data is the new oil, but it's a new oxygen. It's not the new oil, and we really need it for breathing, for one thing, and it's really everywhere, right? So maybe oil is not enough. So really, at least from this experience, data. So we know we only like to talk about ownership of data and profits of data, etc. But data really cannot be really owned, right? So it can be maybe owned temporarily, but but definitely data on other people, it's kind of like strange to say that it's yours. So data is data, right? And the point is that data, again, about anyone can affect everyone. So this notion of data, my data, and I want to protect the privacy of my data, doesn't really work. It's not really my data. It's not just about me. And so data is kind of like a common resource, right? And it's really, so there is some data that talks about me, but a lot of my data is about everybody else in my family or is around me or working with me. So data is kind of a shared resource. And of course, data cannot be localized. It's not the data, this piece of data is here and it's not there. Data, can be shared, secret shared, but it's also, it's everywhere. So it's need to think about it differently. And data, of course, is not additive. It's not 1 + 1 is not 2, as we know, and sometimes more than 2, and sometimes it's even less than 1. So it's a new animal, right? And also we know that data can, combine, disappear, and reappear everywhere later, and can have functions of data and with the right algorithmic structure. data can be molded and manipulated in many ways. So, and in many interactions with the law that I had, so the law doesn't really think about data this way, or the lawmakers or the decision makers, and definitely society doesn't. So somehow this has to be acknowledged. And of course, the data creates new structures and controls, power control structures and dependencies, and new trust relationships. And but I just want to end with another slide, which is actually, it's funny. I was listening to Shafi's talk yesterday, and I saw that she did this. She actually started her talk with the ballot questions in California. But I'll end my talk here with two ballot questions in Massachusetts that really are about data, and really about the trust and distrust in data in some sense. So the first question was whether to amend the right to repair law. That means, is it okay? Should we prohibit car manufacturer from keeping all the data, the data that car collects as it runs, to themselves? Should we force the car companies to release this data to other repair shops, right? And this data is, of course, sensitive, privacy sensitive, and can be anything. So people say they've been the most expensive ballot question in Massachusetts for ever, by far. And really, the car manufacturer lobbied a lot in order to, really with scare tactics and scare ads. If you allow this data to be loose, your privacy is going to be at risk. People will come to your home and break into you because they know where you are, and you should, it's going to be only secure with us. And people didn't buy it. And 75% of the people voted yes to release this data to local car to car shops. It's really a rebuke of you can think people don't understand privacy, people don't understand security, but the point is that there wasn't any really security and privacy issues, and this was scare tactics, and people caught it. People didn't buy it. So that was kind of across the board. So the other one was to create this ranked choice voting to change the voting systems inside Massachusetts, instead of this winner takes all, to this ranked choice, which has all kinds of good and nice societal effects of making ending this the game theoretic push to the middle of where it's really hard to make dynamic changes in the political arena, and many other good things. But then people didn't. What the proponents were, that was the reason, and the main objection was that it's too complicated and we don't understand it. And we don't really understand how it works. It's just way too complicated, and we don't want to deal with that. We don't trust it. So this actually was surprising, because I was sure that it was going to pass, even though I agree that there were many reasons not to not feel comfortable with it. But the point is that it didn't pass, and it didn't pass by quite a bit. And here you could see that the liberal parts of Massachusetts wanted it to pass, and the more conservative parts of Massachusetts didn't want it to pass. But it didn't sound like it was a political decision in terms of right or left, or at least not directly. It was more like a trust in the system. So in one place, people didn't care about scare tactics and said we trust it. In other places, said we don't trust it. And in fact, I think in both cases, the common sense is not bad. But this is just to see example how really the trust in technology is changing our life and social contracts. So we really need to explain technology better. And that's it. That's where I'm going to stop.
Great, thank you. really excellent. Thank you very much. We have a few minutes left for questions. So in the audience, if you have a question, you can place it in the chat window. You can also type in the Q&A section. I don't see a raise hand feature right now, so.
So David, while you're waiting, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, please.
Thanks for that, Ron. I was been thinking about this problem recently because I recently updated my iOS and saw that it's some of the tracking stuff is now built into it. And I'm wondering if you can help me out here. I think if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, I would have a little bit more trust in Silicon Valley. But the fact is the past 10 years have not been pretty. I mean, I think the Valley and the technology sector in general have failed us as individuals, as societies and democracies significantly. We have seen horrific problems in Myanmar and Sri Lanka and the Philippines and Ethiopia. In this country today, the amount of mis and disinformation that these platforms allow and profit from around elections and Black Lives Matter is really, it's hard to sort of trust the companies anymore, the Googles and the Apples and the Amazons. It feels like it's one bad behavior after another. And I'm wondering, how much does that sort of, write laws, build technology, all that is great. But at the end of the day, I don't really trust them anymore. And maybe I'm particularly cynical, but do you see that coming into play here? Like the fact that I think a lot of people are frustrated with the technology sector?
So first, I'm sure you're right, and and to be honest, I don't trust them either very much. So maybe because I was kind of a little bit involved in the process and how it came to be. So I can say that at least from the way I see it, been like a little bit secondhand, but from what I see here, there was a genuine effort to help. So there was some window of opportunity in time, and if in around March, where everybody were kind of like together, let's just get things done. And we were together with a group of others, so my inquiry and our interaction, we were, we had these ideas and we were, publishing and trying to get things done. And it was amazing how we were talking to people around the world, groups, let's get it done, let's do this. And, things that people I would never imagine that I would talk to. And I think Google and Apple actually bought onto this wave. And I think there were specific people inside those two companies that got the companies to talk together. It's really unprecedented and get this thing done. So at least but again, that's me seeing it from where I am.
Yeah.
They were really, as I said before, they were trying to give back the community a little bit. And in fact, they did have an effect. I think if they haven't done what they've done, it would have been different. But we can say, if they build their phone like it should be to begin with, it wouldn't be nice. You wouldn't need them. You can just do it yourself, right? Without all this issue, without being inside the iOS operating system, you cannot actually work the Bluetooth in a normal way, right? And if they build right, then it would be so dangerous to use the microphone to do it in whatever. So there's a lot to do there, but the other part of your question is about this trust, who to trust. So it's another issue that you were trying to do some. There were some studies, read some studies about who do people trust to build their app correctly, and in fact it was consistent that people didn't trust industry, did not trust government. Academia was the one thing that the highest in the trust list. That if some academic institution were behind such an app, then they would trust it more. And maybe that was a mistake to not have something, instead of just Google Apple in some university or something. But maybe that would have helped.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that answer. I appreciate it. Thanks for the talk.
Yeah.
I have a question that relates to that a bit, and you touched on it a little with the when you mentioned about abuse. But I'm just wondering, on a system like that, you would think, especially a system like this, people would be, most cooperative. But we've seen that doesn't seem like it's always the case, even in a life or death situation like a pandemic. So something like someone declaring that they're sick when they're not, to just kind of mess up the system or mess up the hospital data, or people like publishing chirps that they didn't actually receive, or publishing chirps that they received from someone else? Or you have comments on things like that?
So as I said, I think, as I said, that's why I call it the poor man's solution. There's some attacks can be done, but not too much. I mean, the point is that there is one kind of like whatever the Achilles heel here, but which is like the upload of chirps to database has to be done together with approved by a doctor or by somebody who is approved to that somebody should view that that person, that those chips already were came from an infected person. And of course, you have no way of knowing that the phone that I gave you here really my phone. Maybe I took somebody else's phone, even though it was I that was infected. So you can do some stuff like that. And also, but another point in this Achilles here, so this also has to be anonymous, right? So those chips, when they go up, they cannot be linked to me, but the doctor should authenticate me. So there should be some cryptographic protocol done here to make sure that somehow authenticate the right chips and then break the link to who they came from. It can be done, but this is a delicate point, and this is another reason why there should be different layers of databases. So, like for instance, one database for the entire US is not so good because you can actually use it to infect, to kind of, if you mess things up, you're messing up for more people. So as I said, it's not foolproof, but the point is that you cannot do too much abuse. Okay, so you put some chirps that weren't used, and some people will think they're infected, but they were not. You can even target it to certain locations, but those things are still limited in scope, and they're different, to my mind, at a different level than having troves of invasive data or on the locations of people over time, which can be mined for years from now, about communities and stuff like that, which have side effects which have nothing to do with the pandemic.